My husband kissed my sister on our anniversary, right in front of me, like my pain meant nothing and our years were a lie. The champagne flute slipped from my fingers and shattered against the hardwood floor. Jeff and Rachel sprang apart, and their guilty faces illuminated by the string lights I'd spent hours hanging. The surprise anniversary dinner I'd planned collapsed into sudden, devastating clarity. Jessica. Jeff reached toward me, his wedding band catching the light. It's not. I raised my hand, silencing him. My throat burned as I struggled to form words through the shock. Both of you. Out. Now. That night, I became one of those women whose world implodes in an instant. We were supposed to be celebrating 10 years together. Instead, I watched my marriage and family burn to ash before my eyes. My name is Jessica Franklin. I'm 36 years old. And this is the story of how getting destroyed became the first step to being reborn. I should have seen it coming. Jeff had been weird for months. Phone turned face down during dinner, late nights at the office, sudden weekend work emergencies, and Rachel, my own sister, stopping by our house with increasing frequency, always wearing that perfume Jeff once mentioned liking. For our 10th anniversary, I'd booked a remote glasshouse cabin in the Rockies. After all, Jeff kept saying he wanted adventure, missed our wild early years together. I imagined rekindling what we'd lost, conversations that lasted until dawn, laughter that made my ribs ache, the comfortable silence of being truly known. Rachel had offered to house sit and feed our old tabby cat, Marmalade. Don't worry about anything, she'd said, hugging me goodbye. Just enjoy yourself. The drive up that Friday afternoon was golden-hued, but tense. Jeff stared out the window, barely speaking. I filled the silence with chatter about the cabin's amenities, private hot tub, panoramic mountain views, while my stomach knotted with unspoken dread. Happy anniversary, I said as we pulled up to the cabin. Sunlight sparkled through floor-to-ceiling windows onto polished pine floors. Jeff managed a tight smile. It's beautiful. We were unpacking when his phone buzzed. He snatched it from the counter, muttered, "Work," and stepped outside. Through the window, I watched his shoulders hunch as he paced in the snow, breath clouding around him. 10 minutes later, he returned with an unconvincing smile and immediately headed for the shower. While the water ran, I noticed his phone screen light up with a text. I'd never snooped before. Trust had always been our foundation. But something primitive and desperate made me reach for it. The preview flashed clearly. Miss you already. When will you tell her? I need you back in my arms. XOR. My stomach turned to ice. There was only one R in our lives. That night, I watched Jeff across the dinner table. This stranger I'd shared a bed with for a decade. I poured more wine, searching for words. Everything okay with work? I asked casually. He nodded too quickly. Just client issues. Nothing serious. Rachel seemed weird when she came by last week, I said, watching his face carefully. His fork clattered against his plate. Weird how? Just off. You two talk much these days. Jeff's eyes darted away. Not really. Why? The lie hung between us like smoke. I excused myself, locked the bathroom door, and pressed my forehead against the cool mirror. 10 years reduced to this, calculated deception over anniversary wine. I want to go home, I announced the next morning. There's an emergency with my classroom materials. Jeff barely protested. The drive back was a frozen wasteland of unspoken accusations. Every mile closer to home hardened something inside me, not just heartbreak, but resolve. Rachel's car was in our driveway when we arrived. She was curled on our couch wearing my college hoodie, Marmalade purring, in her lap. Her eyes widened when we walked in. You're back early. Everything okay? She tried for casual, but her voice pitched too high. Small emergency, I said, watching her closely. Thanks for holding down the fort. Jeff busied himself with luggage, avoiding both our eyes. The tension thickened until it felt like cement in my lungs. That night, I waited until Jeff fell asleep before slipping from bed. Guided by the ghostly glow of my phone, I searched the house for evidence. In Rachel's overnight bag, tucked beneath folded clothes, I found a birthday card addressed to Jeff. Our secret is the best present. I can't wait for the day we stop hiding. Love you, always. Rach. The betrayal was no longer just suspicion. It was solid, tangible, dated proof in cheerful handwriting on cardstock. I spent the night at the kitchen table, dry-eyed and calculating. By morning, I had a plan. Let's have dinner tonight, I suggested over coffee. The three of us. To thank Rachel for watching the house. Both of them exchanged quick, panicked glances, but agreed. I spent the day in a strange, detached calm, chopping veggies, for Jeff's favorite lasagna, selecting wine, even putting on lipstick. The familiar rituals felt like a costume I was wearing one last time. Rachel arrived at 7, clutching wine and wearing too much perfume. Jeff hovered awkwardly in the living room. I greeted them with the practiced smile of a woman who had nothing to lose. Dinner progressed with strained small talk until I set down my fork during dessert. The clink against fine china punctuated the silence. So, I said, voice steady, when were you two planning to tell me? Rachel's face drained of color. Jeff froze mid-chew. Tell you what, Rachel attempted, her voice thin. I placed the birthday card on the table beside my plate. About this, and the texts, and the late-night calls, and whatever else you've been hiding. The confession tumbled out in fragments. 6 months of secret meetings. Emotional distance turned physical, guilt that never quite stopped them. Their words blurred together as I watched with strange detachment, like witnessing a car crash in slow motion. I never meant, Rachel began. Don't. My voice cut like glass. Don't you dare say you didn't mean to hurt me. You made choices. Every single day, you chose this. Jeff reached for my hand. Jess, please. We can work through. I pulled away. There's nothing to work through. You both need to leave, tonight. They scrambled for excuses, apologies, and tears, but I was unmovable. Within an hour, Rachel had gathered her things, and Jeff had packed an overnight bag, both exiting separately with hollow promises to talk soon. The door closed behind them with finality. In the sudden silence of my home, no longer ours, I finally let myself feel everything. Not just grief, but fury that burned white-hot through my veins. This wasn't just heartbreak. This was declaration of war. The next morning, I called in sick to work. My voice shook on the phone. Not from sadness, but from adrenaline surging through me. By noon, I was sitting across from Allison McKay. I'm a divorce attorney with shrewd eyes and a brick-walled office downtown. Tell me everything, she said, sliding me a tissue box I didn't need. I laid out the evidence, texts, the card, timeline, witnesses who'd seen them together when Jeff was supposedly working. Allison took methodical notes, occasionally nodding. Alberta gives you strong grounds with this evidence, she said finally. Are you certain you want to proceed? Absolutely, I replied. No mediation, no second chances. That afternoon, I returned home to find Rachel's car in my driveway again. She sat on the porch steps, eyes red-rimmed. I approached slowly, keys gripped tight between my knuckles. Jess, please, just 5 minutes, she begged, rising. I know I don't deserve it, but you're right, you don't. I stepped around her to reach my door. It was a mistake, she called after me. We never meant for it to happen. I turned, anger finally breaking through. A mistake? A mistake is forgetting my birthday, Rachel. This was calculated. This was months of lying to my face while sleeping with my husband. Get off my property or I'll call the police. I slammed the door, heart hammering. Through the window, I watched her leave, shoulders shaking with sobs. For the first time since childhood, I felt nothing for my sister's tears. That night, I gathered everything that reminded me of Jeff. Photos, mementos, the stupid novelty, mugs from our honeymoon, and boxed them unceremoniously. His remaining clothes went into trash bags by the front door. I texted him a photo of the pile with 3 words, "Come get these." The phone calls began hours later. First Jeff, then Rachel, then my mother, whose voice wavered between shock and hesitant defense of Rachel. She's always been impulsive. You know how she gets. I blocked them all. Grief wasn't just about losing love. It was about cutting dead weight from my life. That weekend, my friend Maya showed up unannounced with takeout and determination. "Your mother called me," she explained, pushing past me into the kitchen. I told her I'm on Team Jessica. No questions asked. She unpacked containers of pad thai while I leaned against the counter, suddenly exhausted by the simple kindness of loyalty. "Everyone knows?" I asked. Maya nodded. "Small town, big drama, but listen, everyone is horrified for you, not at you." For the first time in days, I cried, great, heaving sobs that bent me double while Maya held my shoulders. It wasn't pretty or cathartic, just necessary release. After dinner, Maya helped me rearrange the furniture, moving the couch to face the window instead of the TV, shifting the bedroom around until nothing was where Jeff expected it to be. Small rebellions that helped me reclaim my space. "What now?" she asked as we collapsed on the newly positioned couch. I stared at the ceiling. I survive, then I figure out who I am without them. The divorce proceeded with clinical efficiency. Jeff wanted mediation to keep things amicable, but I refused. In court, he looked smaller somehow, diminished without the pedestal I'd kept him on for years. "Jessica," he approached during a recess, voice low. "Please, I made a terrible mistake." "Save it for someone who believes you," I replied, stepping around him. Allison secured a favorable settlement. The house remained mine. Our savings wouldn't vanish into his new life. Even Marmalade legally belonged to me now, though the old cat seemed to sense something was wrong, often staring at Jeff's empty chair with confused yellow eyes. Meanwhile, Rachel moved away. Calgary, according to my mother, who still attempted reconciliation during cautious phone calls. "She's really struggling, Jess," Mom ventured during one conversation. "That's unfortunate," I replied flatly. "Actions have consequences." "You've always been the stronger one," she sighed. "Maybe someday, maybe never," I cut in. "I need to go, Mom." Spring melted into Edmonton with shocking swiftness. I threw myself into work, volunteering for committees, staying late to redesign my classroom. The school principal, Mr. Garrett, noticed. "You've been putting in serious hours," he commented one afternoon. "Everything okay?" I considered, lying, then decided against it. "Going through a divorce, work helps." He nodded slowly. "Know what else helps? Actual responsibility. We have an assistant principal position opening up. You should apply." The suggestion startled me. For years, I'd coasted on being competent but unremarkable, safe. Now safety seemed like a poor substitute for growth. That night, I cleaned out my home office, no longer tiptoeing around Jeff's papers, and began drafting my application. With each qualification I listed, each accomplishment I'd downplayed to avoid outshining my husband, anger fueled my determination. How many opportunities had I missed while making myself smaller? Summer arrived with relentless brightness. I painted the bedroom emerald green, a color Jeff had always hated. I adopted a rescue puppy, a gangly mutt with one blue eye who slept curled against Marmalade despite the cat's initial protests. The interview for assistant principal came and went. I wore a bold red blouse beneath my blazer, spoke with conviction about student-centered leadership, and shook hands firmly with the district superintendent. "We'll be in touch soon," he promised. 2 days later, my phone rang. I'd gotten the position. When I hung up, I danced around the kitchen with the dog, laughing until tears came. Not from grief this time, but from the strange, buoyant feeling of possibilities expanding around me. In August, an envelope arrived with a Calgary postmark, Rachel's handwriting. I nearly threw it away, but curiosity won out. Inside was a short, unadorned note. "Jessica, I'm getting help. Therapy, volunteer work, trying to understand why I hurt the person I've loved longest in this world. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know I'm trying to be better. If you ever want to talk, my number is still the same. Love always, Rachel." I read it 3 times, surprising myself when I folded it carefully instead of tearing it up. Not forgiveness, just acknowledgement that some bridges, though burned, leave visible ruins in the water. The new school year started with disorienting intensity. My office, my actual office with a nameplate reading, Assistant. Principal Franklin became command central for the organized chaos of September. Teachers sought my guidance, parents respected my authority, and students quickly learned I was firm but fair. One particularly hectic afternoon, a knock interrupted my paperwork. The school secretary poked her head in. "There's a gentleman. Here to see you. Says he's from the Parent Association." A tall man with kind eyes and prematurely salt and pepper hair entered, extending his hand. "Ethan Marcotte. My daughter Lily is in 7th grade. I'm helping coordinate the fall fundraiser and hoped you might have some time to discuss it." Something fluttered in my chest. Not attraction exactly, but recognition of possibility. I gestured to the chair opposite my desk. "I've got 15 minutes before my next meeting, Mr. Marcotte. Let's see what we can accomplish." 15 minutes became 30, then coffee in the teacher's lounge, then occasional emails about fundraising progress. Ethan was divorced too, 5 years out, with shared custody of Lily. He didn't push, didn't flirt overtly, just showed consistent, respectful interest. "Would you like to join Lily and me for the community bonfire next weekend?" he asked. One day when dropping off permission slips. Strictly as colleagues, of course. I hesitated, fingers tracing the edge of my desk. "I'd like that," I finally replied. "Not as colleagues, though." His smile reached his eyes. "And I was hoping you'd say that." The evening of the bonfire was crisp September perfection. Lily was initially shy but warmed up when I brought my dog, who promptly covered her in slobbery kisses. Ethan handed me hot cider in a paper cup, our fingers brushing. "So," he said, as we watched Lily join her friends near the flames, "think you'll ever trust someone again?" The bluntness of his question surprised me. "I'm working on it," I answered honestly, "one day at a time." He nodded. "That's all any of us can do. For what it's worth, I think you're doing great." We stood in comfortable silence, watching sparks rise toward stars. For the first time in nearly a year, I felt simple contentment. Not happiness exactly, but the solid foundation it might someday build upon. October brought parent-teacher conferences, Halloween preparations, and increasingly frequent text messages from Ethan. We moved slowly. Coffee shops first, then walks with the dog. Finally dinner at a quiet restaurant where we talked until closing time. "I'm not looking to rescue anyone," he told me over dessert. "And I don't need rescuing either. Just companionship. Someone who gets that life is complicated but still worth showing up for." I studied him in the candlelight. I can work with that. Meanwhile, school kept me grounded. I particularly connected with Mrs. Chen, a first-year teacher struggling with classroom management. She came to my office one afternoon, clearly fighting tears. "I don't know if I can do this," she confessed. "Every day feels like I'm barely keeping my head above water." I passed her tissues. "You know what I've learned this year? Sometimes treading water is victory enough, but you won't always be treading water." She looked up, surprised. "Did something happen to you? You always seem so together." "Life fell apart, and I put it back together differently," I replied simply. "You're doing better than you think." As autumn deepened, I found myself changing in subtle ways. I laughed more freely. I spoke without calculating my words. I stopped expecting disaster around every corner. At Thanksgiving, I accepted my parents an invitation to dinner, with conditions. "Rachel won't be there," Mom assured me. "She understands." The meal was awkward, but not unbearable. Dad hugged me too tightly when I arrived. Mom fussed over serving dishes, and we all carefully avoided certain topics. But underneath the strain, I felt the tug of connection, damaged but not destroyed. As I was leaving, Mom pressed a small package into my hands. "I found this in the attic. Thought you might want it." Later that night, I unwrapped an old photo album filled with childhood pictures, Rachel and me building sandcastles, riding bikes, dressed as matching pumpkins for Halloween. Simpler times before betrayal complicated love. I traced the images with my fingertip, surprised to find the pain had dulled to an ache rather than a stabbing wound. Not forgiveness, exactly, but perspective. Winter arrived with surprising gentleness. Ethan and I developed easy rhythms, Sunday morning coffees, helping Lily with science projects, comfortable silences while reading on my couch. His daughter began leaving drawings on my refrigerator. My dog started sleeping at the foot of her bed during weekend visits. "Is this weird?" I asked Maya during our weekly lunch. "Moving forward like this?" "Happiness isn't weird, Jess," she replied firmly. "It's necessary." Christmas approached with its emotional landmines. Last year's holiday season had been spent in shock and anger. This year felt like tentative rebuilding. I bought thoughtful gifts, decorated a small tree, even baked cookies with Lily one snowy afternoon. On Christmas Eve, Ethan and I walked through neighborhood light displays, his gloved hand warm around mine. "What are you thinking about?" he asked as we paused to admire an elaborate nativity scene. "How different everything is from last year," I admitted. "And I never expected to feel okay again, let alone this." He squeezed my hand. "That's the thing about rebuilding. You get to choose better materials this time." Later that night, alone in my bedroom, I pulled out Rachel's most recent letter. After months of silence, I finally composed a reply. "Rachel, I'm not ready for phone calls or visits. Maybe someday, maybe not. But I wanted you to know I'm doing well. I hope your therapy is helping. Take care of yourself. Jessica." It wasn't forgiveness, but it was acknowledgement. I sealed the envelope, feeling something like peace settle over me. New Year's. Eve arrived bright and cold. Ethan, Lily, Maya, and her children gathered at my house for board games and sparkling cider. At midnight, Ethan kissed me softly as the children threw confetti. "To new beginnings," he whispered. I smiled against his lips. "And to knowing we're strong enough to deserve them." Outside, fireworks painted the sky in bursts of color and light. I watched through the window, arm around Lily's shoulders, Ethan's hand warm against my back. The path forward wasn't perfect or certain. There would still be difficult days, uncomfortable family gatherings, moments when old betrayals cast long shadows, but I knew something now that I hadn't before. Getting destroyed wasn't the end of my story. It was just the necessary beginning of a better one. What did you think of the story? Leave a comment telling us about your experience and rate this. Story from 0 to 10. We want to know about you. 2 buttons will appear on the screen. 1 to subscribe, if you haven't already, and another to watch another interesting story. Choose one. Thanks for watching this far. See you soon.